Hi, I'm Christopher Hein. Today we're going to be talking about Kanren Waza. So Kanren means adaptive. And this is a field in Aikido which is generally really neglected. So an adaptive technique is a technique that teaches you how to change from one thing into the next thing. And unfortunately for most Aikido schools, when they're teaching Aikido, they teach it as if that one technique will always work. So if you were to master that technique, then it would always work 100% of the time. And this is just not true. Depending upon the physicality and the skill of the person you're dealing with, you're probably going to have to adapt your technique to something else. In sport martial arts, this is not a thing, right? So all sport martial arts teach around this concept of how do you adapt when they defend against what you're doing. In Aikido, we don't talk about it a lot. Now that's historically not true. There are several Aikido teachers who have done works on Kanren Waza, adaptive techniques. Saito Sensei in particular, in traditional Aikido, has a good section on Kanren Waza. But these are the techniques that you use to adapt when someone's not doing what they're supposed to do in the form. So I'm going to get Josh out here. We're going to go to work for you guys. Josh? Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about Kanren. I'm going to pick one form, and we're going to go through some of the Kanren that come up for that form. The form we're going to take is Shomenuchi Ikkyo Motte, because it's a common form. However, I have a ton of Kanren. I teach through Kanren generally. So meaning, what I generally do is I teach a form, and then I watch the class, and then I see what help they need with the where they're needing Kanren, and then I teach those in there as we go. And so that's generally the way I teach. So if you want to see a set of these, I can teach you a full giant set of these, but this will give you the idea of where we're going with it. Now understand, I covered this in a video that's on YouTube you can check out, but you know, a form is comprised of many techniques. So when we look at the form of Shomenuchi Ikkyo Motte, let's look at the techniques in there, because each one of these techniques could have a problem, and that's where we'd have to apply the Kanren. So the form we're going to look at is Shomenuchi Ikkyo Motte. So here's our Shomenuchi. That's our first technique, right? So you could either look at it as the defense right here, or you could look at it as the Shomenuchi, but that's our first technique. Our second is the Ikkyo proper, which is control the elbow right there. So now I have an Ikkyo beginning to go, and I'm doing this Ikkyo in an Omote fashion, which means I'm driving to the front as opposed to driving to the rear, right? So, or moving to the rear. And if I did it to the rear, then we'd call that Urawaza, which means receptive, but right now I'm doing this Omote, which means front direct. So this Ikkyo is being done in Omote fashion. Then I would continue this in until we got here, which is the Ude-ose, and Ude-ose just means arm pin, so this is our arm pin right here. And then from here, I would begin to take him down, right, and then we'd have a Ikkyo-ose, which is just the pin that happens on the ground. So that would be the full form for this. Now, each one of those technical parts could need Kanren, which is an adaptation because he's doing something. So let's look at the first one, which is Ikkyo to Kanren Iriminage. So we'll Ikkyo Kanren Iriminage. So the Shomenuchi Ikkyo is happening. Now normally what happens in a Shomenuchi Ikkyo at this point is my partner stays facing me like this, and I drive into him, and that'll take his balance. But my partner could turn his back to me, right? So just like this, okay? Now, a lot of times you'll get this when you're getting someone new or someone who wants to be a jerk or whatever, and they're trying to resist your Ikkyo. And so what they'll do is if I'm trying to drive this guy forward and he turns his back towards me, right, like this, you see more and more and more, it's really difficult. And you see, as I started to do it, Josh just turned his back to me more and more and more, and this makes it really, really difficult for me, right? Okay, so what you do in this situation, and stay really upright, we'll talk about the other one later, but so as I start to do this and he stays real upright like this, I'm going to take the Iriminage. Now the Iriminage is right here. Okay, so it's a super easy Iriminage because he's giving it to me, like literally giving it to me. So if we go to the front here, let's go just a little bit this way. Okay, so I'm driving into this guy and he turns his back. Now look, to get Iriminage, all I got to do is slide the Ikkyo hand over here. That will release him. He'll stand bolt upright, which is what he wants to do. And I come right through here and we get Iriminage off of that. So the Iriminage Kanren's really naturally from the Ikkyo if they're turning their back like that. So if you get a guy who's doing that a lot, you're going to get the Iriminage. So that's where we're having a problem with our Ikkyo, and it Kanrens. Okay. Now in that same technical problem set, so we could be here and he could be pushing directly against me like this, right? And so he's really pushing against me, and that's because he's so strong that he can just force himself back down like that. Okay. He's just pushing right up against me. Okay. So now we're going to use Ikkyo Kanren Kokyunage. So we're going to Ikkyo, we're going to adapt that Ikkyo into a Kokyunage. So as he's pushing into me, I let that go by and I step in here and I get the Kokyunage. So again, you see how naturally this sets up. He's pushing, I let that go right over my head like this. This pushes his hips, this pushes his hips into my hips, and I step right through that imbalance, right? So he does it to himself 90% of the time. He comes in, I hit my hips right here, boom, and then I just drive right through him for the kokyunage. So that's ikkyo, kanren, kokyunage, right? So that's how you would adapt in that situation. We could also have a situation where he just drives his elbow straight down like that, right? So look, he took my ikkyo away. Now he didn't drive into me enough that I could get the kokyunage, so here this would be hard to get a kokyunage, not going to work. And he doesn't turn his back towards me at all, so I'm not going to get the irimi. But here when he drops this, I can turn out, so sotomore. And what this is going to do is it's going to give me the space here, which is what I want. And as he comes around, we get kotegaishi. So that's ikkyo, kanren, kotegaishi. Okay? And it happens because we're here and he just steals his elbow away. I turn to the outside and there gives us a kotegaishi, right? So there's another adaptation. And all those adaptations are happening because he's resisting my ikkyo proper, right? So when I'm trying to do this and trying to go omote, either one, he turns his back to me, right? And I get the iriminage. Two, he pushes against me and I get the kokyunage. Three, he steals his elbow and I get the kotegaishi, right? So you can see that's how we adapt each one of those. So this is just the first. We could do it for each stage of this ikkyo omote. We'd have a really, really long video if we did that. And we can do it for every Aikido technique we have. So that's what Kanren Waza is. And that's different than Kaishi Waza and different than, so like a Kaishi Waza is to change a technique over, right? So if, say, Josh was applying a kotegaishi to me, right? So yeah, it doesn't matter. He applied a kotegaishi to me, and so then I apply kotegaishi to him. That's Kaishi. That's to turn it over. So meaning he does a technique to me and I do it back to him. Kanren's different. It's an adaptation, meaning I do something to him, he changes the situation, so I move with that change and do another technique. So that's the basic idea of Kanren Waza.